Well, here we are. What we got here is a very noisy sunrise just about to happen over there in Stratford-on-Avon on March I think it's the 30th. We're going to have a quick, nice, early walk around the town and just have a quick look at one or two of the sites. We're not going to hang around for too long. Yeah, that's looking obviously east, and it's just about, the sun is just about to rise now. That's the River Avon. There you go. There's some people. Yeah. Obviously off for a bit of a morning of round. We're going to walk over here. That's the River Avon. If you look there, another day with a full moon. It's actually a beautiful, beautiful morning. Cold or chilly, not cold. And over there we're looking at the what's it? Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Yeah. Yeah, that's the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. So we're looking at over there. Yeah. Where they do the which is obviously dedicated to Shakespeare himself. Yeah. Which is obviously dedicated to Shakespeare. That one there looks a bit strange, because that one was opened in 1932. Because it's built on the site of the original one. If you think, a lot of people think Stratford-on-Avon, they think Shakespeare, they think theatre and stuff like that. But of course, this wasn't the Hollywood of his day, Stratford-on-Avon. It was where he came from. It was his hometown. So the original theatre was in 1879-ish. But it was destroyed by fire in 1920s, 1926. And a thing about this building, it's of its day, obviously, the 1920s and 30s, but it was built by a girl called Elizabeth Scott, who was an architect. And this was the first major work by a female architect in Britain. The first major work by a female architect in Britain, which is one for the girls there, for the ladies there. And of course is dedicated to the performances of Shakespeare, although they do other stuff. So we're going to take a walk over. How are you doing? So, there we go. Yeah, obviously it's dedicated to Shakespeare. And it has about 1,000, they say, somewhere in the region. I think there's a couple of different sections of it, but it seats about 1,400, which is not a lot in the great scheme of things when you're talking New York and that. But of course, or London, when you think there are bigger theatres everywhere around the world. But of course, this isn't a big town. Stratford-on-Avon is not a big city, a major city. It's a large town. Along the river here, obviously, a lot of eateries and pubs, and a few locks and stuff if you're touristing. This is a memorial to firefighters. We had an incident where some firemen were killed in a collapsed building, and as it's a county of Warwickshire and all this sort of thing, this is where there was 4 of them killed in the one incident, and so this is a memorial to those particular firefighters and firefighters in general. Locked gates. And that's really the front over there. It can get a bit floody around this part of the county, and so they obviously built a little bit back from the river. And there you have the river. Well, Avon just means river. It's actually the Britannic term for river, or British. The Germans not being very bright, God bless them. When they come over here they said, "What's that?" And the Brits said, "Whoa." And the Brits says Avon. And then they called all the rivers Avon. So we've got about 7 rivers Avon, because the Saxons, Anglo-Saxons, not the brightest people. I mean, God bless them, they try hard, but they're not the brightest. Yeah, that's it. And Strath is another Britannic term which means crossing. So it basically is ford on the Avon. Strathclyde is the same in Scotland. Stratford down in London, it just means ford. It's just a crossing ford. It's the same thing from the old language before English. If you go to Wales, you will see they use the same word, but they spell it with an F. But it is the same word. Yeah, and part of the river is linked to the canals. Yeah, the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. I looked at it, it reminded me of a factory building. I don't know whether that was deliberate, a style of the time, but if you're thinking this is coming out of the 1920s, you know, obviously it's been modernised. I think it's been modernised a couple of times since then, because initially it was really in the 17th century that people started to come to Stratford-on-Avon because of William Shakespeare. If you think about it, you know, if you're a Hollywood, if you're a film buff, you go to Hollywood, you go to where the music and the films were made. You either go to New York or you go to Hollywood. You don't go to the town. Maybe in the old days they'd go to Tin Pan Alley or whatever they called it in New York. But it was in the 17th century really that they started to come to Stratford, and the town started celebrating their famous son. I'm not going to say the famous son, because you never know. There might be somebody who I don't know about, who I should do. It's a lovely, lovely morning. Yeah, they haven't built right up to the river because it does have a little bit of a floody. It does flood. The church is down the bottom there. You go down there, there's a place called Luddington. Lud or Lud is a link to it's the name of the old the god, old Britannic god, Lug. Luddington, Lugton. London is named after the guy as well. So in other words, it's a very, very old name, like Ludgate in London is a link to the same thing, named after a pre-Christian god. One of the things that people often don't realise is that the oldest things, well, if you're talking about language, the oldest things, the oldest form of the language, it's in the rivers and it's in the mountains. Yeah? So if there's an old language, you'll find, like with the word Avon, River Avon, what actually happens is when the language changes, in general, the new people come in, the old names stick. So for example, Thames, the River Thames, I don't think they've ever worked out what that means or who that comes from. They don't get, linguistically, they don't understand where the word comes from. So Luddington, it's only a little village. It's the next place down the river. Yep. The back end of the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Yeah. So it's not really I imagine if it was in another, good God, if it was in France, yeah, it'd probably be a 40 or 50 story. Or if the Americans were here, if this was in America, yeah, there'd probably be like a massive theatre. There'd be masses of, if you look along the road here, you go to places in France that I've been to which have tourist destinations are on the seafront. Every single house will be turned into a tourist shop selling this and that and the other. But over here it is still touristy, and it does. That's the Guild Hall up there. We're going up there in a second. That's building on the left. Some ducks. Yeah, this is the pretty. So like I say, yeah, the French would turn every building into a shop to sell tourist items and stuff. And I imagine if we're in America, you would have a American-sized theatre. I think it must be something to do with industry, and the reason is I'm looking at that, and it looks like a representation of a chimney. If you go back to the 1920s, see it up there? If you go back to the 1920s in Britain, we are talking the height of the British Empire, the height of the industrialisation, just defeated the Germans again, and so it's probably meant to be a modernist style built a thingy. Anyway, whatever it is, for whatever reason, it's not. I don't think it's what the what would be built today. But still, a beautiful, clean building. Bricks and steel. I like my clean buildings. I like my simple country buildings, stone and wood, or stone and steel. Nice and simple. All there. Stone and wood and glass. You've got a Brittany. All the buildings are like that. Well, not all of them. A lot of the older buildings are like that. Nice. There we go. We go along the front here. We just walk around the building. Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Back out into this green area. Recreation area by the river. We're just going to turn up the road here. And look back. Yep. At the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. Sun coming up there. God giving us another day to God giving us another day to try not to mess up the world. Yeah, giving us another day. Giving us all another opportunity not to make a complete hash of everything that the poor man created, or girl, woman. Right. I'm going across here. A lot of this is a lot of medieval England was of course replaced in the Victorian times, because of course we had the money to do it. When you have a massive empire, you can afford to get rid of the old and revamp it all. So of course the Victorians did that, and so not a lot of it is, some towns not a lot of it is still around. But there's a shop there built in 1485. That's the year that Henry Tudor defeated, funnily enough, Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth, which of course you might have heard of Richard III, because Shakespeare wrote a little ditty about him. Yeah. So this was actually this building was either been built or was constructed on the same year. This old Richard III ended up with his job been taken off him. And it's a strange old thing, because in the same year, this is referenced in today, because I just had a look at a few things that happened in 1485, and among the other things was in 1485 the sweating sickness made its first appearance in England. Oh yeah, what's that then? It's a kind of plague, ladies and gentlemen, a plague, and a dangerous one as well, which killed quite a lot of people. They believe that some of the people actually at the Battle of Bosworth were suffering from it. One or two of the people, who was it? Oh, there's a couple of people who they believed had it. It's a. If you Google it, they'll explain it to you. It is a killer. It is a killer, and they didn't really work out. They know in modern terms, they think they know what it is now. But it's basically a very, very bad version of the flu that came along. Swept England a couple of times. It swept England again. Cromwell, apparently they believe that Cromwell's wife and maybe his daughters died from this. They called it the sleeping sickness. And that started in 1485. So there you go. So there's two. We got Shakespeare. We got a bit of a link to modern history. What's going on today? And of course, if you're a Latino, 1485, Hernan Cortez was screaming and shouting and kicking his feet up somewhere in Spain, I believe. Cortez definitely was Spanish when he went on to capture Mexico and destroy the Aztec kingdom there. So he was born at the same year, 1485. And Catherine of Aragon, somewhere down there in southern Europe, was kicking her heels up and screaming and shouting. And she became the first wife of Henry VIII. And she was born same year. Her and Cortez, 1485. Plague, births and deaths. Well, the plague was starting up, everything else was going on, if you see what I mean. Life continues, nothing changes. You know, there was life, there was death. Poor old Richard went to his maker. Meanwhile, history was starting for some others. You know, I'm sure if there'd been Aztec spies over here in Spain scoping the place out, they would have been hunting down the newborn Cortez. Yeah, we're walking up here. This is Town Hall on the top here. And it is still, Stratford is still a working town. I'm going to pick up the pace a bit because I want this done before people start getting out and about. It's a Tudor World, which is basically an old building that is also a private museum that you can visit. Yeah, it's not as medieval as people would think, Stratford. There are other villages and towns in England that have retained more of their medieval character. But there again, went through a boom in Victorian times and we tried to rebuild everything, didn't we? Well, they did. I tried to research that Tudor gate. Two poets, our door. Our door. I don't know what that means. I tried to research it. Didn't get very far. So that's it then. Town is starting to wake up, so I'm just going to speed up a bit. Up here is the town hall. On the left. Yeah, this is the town hall on the left up here. There used to be an old market hall here back in the day, because Stratford-on-Avon obviously was a little village, but it was given a right to hold a market by Richard I. Might have heard of him, Richard the Lionheart and all that malarkey. So they were given the right to hold a market. Hey, not very libertarian of them. You had to demand you had to ask permission so you could sell stuff. I suppose it was to do with taxation. And it was built here. And they had a market, and then they built a market hall here. And then what happened was, during the Civil War, if you look up that road there, yeah, during the Civil War, the parliamentarians took over the old parliamentarians took over for a while, and they used they used a market hall, and they managed to blow it up gunpowder by mistake, and then they rebuilt it. All these older towns have these market halls. It's just basically an indoor market, an area where you could sell your goods. Walking up here, this is something that old Shakespeare would have seen. Yeah? And that's that church, that's the site he would have seen. That church there, because that dates to the 12th century. Yeah? There was a guild, which is like a union. It's to do with knights and stuff, and the church. There was a guild founded in 1269. The Fraternity or Guild of the Holy Cross. So there you go. You know what they're up to. Either fighting crusades or trying to get money together to fight a crusade. Anyway, the Bishop of Worcester at the time gave them the land here, gave them some money to set up a hospital for poor priests of the diocese. And basically what they got for their money was the Guild's Chapel. Yeah. That's a hotel right opposite if you're coming over to see, have a look round. The Guild's Chapel. And we know that this was the site that old William Shakespeare saw, probably on a daily basis, because there is where he used to live. The site of it. It's the back end of a pub or something. But Will Shakespeare died in I think it was 1616, yeah, over here. 1616. The site of Shakespeare's family home from 1597 to 1616. So yeah, he'd have been out here being all thespian-y. You know, he'd be, because he married Anne Hathaway, didn't he? Who was a local farmer's daughter. What happened to the old Guild Hall, or the Guild Chapel here? What happened to the Guild? The good men of the Holy Cross, the Guild, or what's it? The Fraternity of the Holy Cross, was Henry VIII took it from them. They were suppressed in the 15th century, and the money was taken by the crown, and then it was given to the people of Stratford. By the people I mean the mayor and the councillors were giving it, along with a little bit of money for a trust fund by the king. And what you see then is a grammar school. They built a grammar school, and almshouses. Almshouses are houses for the poor, and they're still there. That's them down the side there. So there you go. Shakespeare's old family home and the chapel. Unfortunately, like a lot of these places these days, they're locked The churches are locked. There was a time when we were a civilised country when churches and religious places could be left open. But, well, let's be quite frank about it, because of the weakness of the judiciary, place has gone to hell in a handcart, hasn't it? To a certain extent. Let's just say it's not quite. Well, I don't pick on anywhere in particular. It's not bad, but it's far worse than it used to be. At one time you could leave a church open and nobody would touch it. The houses next door might get broken into or burgled. The churches and religious sites were left alone. But there you go, that's all gone now. So we're walking back up towards the high street now. Yeah, walking back up towards the high street. This, as I said up there, is a few pubs and a few eateries, and I think the railway station. This is a good one. Which is the Garrick. Yeah, the Garrick here. Which is a very, very old pub. The Garrick Inn, which I had a beer in, but I didn't really, a few years ago, but I didn't realise. Yeah, it's as old as it looks, and it's been refurbished a few times. The thing is, it was named after a David Garrick, who was an actor back in the 1790s. He was a major entrepreneur in the theatre. He was an actor, put on shows, run theatres, did the whole 9 yards, and changed the way of acting apparently. Made it more realistic. Before that they were a little bit, the style of acting was changed. It became more, the dialogue was read more realistic, and it all comes from him apparently. But this place itself, it's been named the Greyhound and the Reindeer. Before that, going back to medieval times. And it's believed, another reference for today, that a bout of plague started here in 1564. There was a guy staying in it, a guy called Oliver Gunn, who was a weaver's apprentice, and he caught and died of plague here. Because of course in the time of William Shakespeare, there was plague coming in from Europe, bubonic plague. And in fact, I think when he was born, pretty much on the year he was born, I think they lost a quarter of the population of Stratford-on-Avon to the plague. A quarter. Think about that. Yeah, a quarter of the population to plague. But there you go, very, very old. pre-medieval pub. Definitely worth a visit. And almost certain, if you like to tipple, almost certain Bill was in there one day, at least. Or at least his wife might have been. Looking for him. Yeah, the Garrick. Yeah, it was in there a few years ago. The afternoon. Now the rest of the town is just a shopping area. It's still a working town. It's not been completely touristised like the Yanks would do, who do their tourism at 11. And the French are similar. A few pictures of the town back in the day, Victorian. So there we are. There are a lot of eateries and restaurants here in Stratford, obviously, of various quality. You can get good meals here. A long time ago I brought a girl over here for a weekend. We went out, we ate very well. But it's up here we're going to the American Fountain. This was a gift to the town by a Philadelphia chap, guy from Philadelphia, and it's obviously in America. And it was linked, of course, to Shakespeare. But it was also linked to the Jubilee of Queen Victoria. It was the Jubilee year of Queen Victoria's reign. And the guy, which is George W. Childs, Childs, gifted this to the town, which is nice of him. We're still in lockdown at the moment over here. It's another couple of days before mid-April, before everything is supposed to open up again. I think everybody's going to be a bit surprised at how many of these places never make it back on their feet. If you were running a business and you weren't in debt when this hit, you're going to have been a very, very lucky man or woman, because it's going to destroy a lot of these little businesses. You know, destroy a lot of them. And here we are, the American fountain and clock. Playhouse. I don't know if that's a pub or a thingy or an actual theatre. Yeah, it is actually a fountain, or was actually a fountain. In her days every man shall eat in safety under his own vine what he plants, and sing the merry songs of peace to all his neighbours. God shall be truly known, and those about her from her shall read the perfect ways of honour, and by those claim their greatness not by blood. Henry VIII. I think the her related to there is Queen Victoria, because at the time things were going rather well in the empire, and being very wealthy and industrial, creating industrialism stakes. A gift to the American citizen George W. Childs of Philadelphia to the town of Shakespeare in the Jubilee year of Queen Victoria. It's obviously for the workings for the another old pub. We have lots and lots of old pubs. Yeah, it's a lovely, it must have cost a few bob. It's a beautiful thing. The carving is really excellent. And there you go, the whole point of it. Honest water which ne'er left man in the mire. Simon, that's Timon of Athens, Act 1. Honest water which ne'er left man. Honest water which ne'er left man in the mire. Yeah, that's yeah, that's true, I suppose. And there was the fountain coming out there. So if you think about it, before industrialisation, water came from pumps and was put at public accesses. The pumps right up to the 60s in parts of rural Ireland and parts of rural Britain. It was the pumps. You paid your rates and the council provided you with water through pumps. So we go over here and we walk down this end. It's starting to get a bit busy now, and I don't want to video people. It's one of the reasons I came in so early. You don't have lots of people about. So there we go. Down here somewhere, apparently, Shakespeare was born somewhere. Although I must admit, I'm not too sure which one. It wouldn't be in the Citizens Advice Bureau, that's for one thing. But it's in this part of the town that Shakespeare was born. And like I say, I think he was born on a year when the plague hit. I'm fairly certain he was born on a year when the plague hit, and they lost a quarter of the population. So today that would be somewhere in the region of, in Britain it'd be about 20 million. In the States it'd be over 100 million. You know? Like I say, quite a few old buildings, but it is still a working town. And there is our man. Here we go. Chap himself. It says up there Shakespeare's birthplace on that sign. I don't think he was born into poverty. I'll have to go back and have another look. But I don't think he was... they weren't born into poverty, if I remember rightly. And they married well. His father married well. Yeah, did his father marry well? Yeah. His father married well, and then he did quite well because he married Anne Hathaway. Yeah, so I think both of the marriages were to people who had some substance, shall we say. Mind you, after the plague, it was a strange old time because the economic system, it actually brought an end to, helped bring an end to feudalism, which the Normans had introduced to the country, the British Isles. But the feudalism came to an end because the massive, well, the economy was obviously hugely affected. People didn't know what was going on, they couldn't plan anything. There was up to a quarter of them died, whole families wiped out. And the thing was, if you were a farm worker or a labourer, you suddenly become a valuable asset, because there was what we'd call what they'd call today wage inflation. What they called was just desserts, getting what you work for. But what happened was the number of people who were eligible to work, who could work, obviously dropped, and because of that their wages went up. So in one way, not good, but in another way, depending on where you were in the economic scale, if you had a skill, you had a family business that involved a skill and you had the people to do it, you could have made money. But when you lose a quarter of the population, obviously that's not a good thing. But it did change the whole way the economics worked, the whole economy. There simply wasn't the manpower anymore. People would have basically been very, very upset about losing their entire family, all their children, having everything they worked for. But then of course they were a bit more robust and accepting the fact that your children were all likely to die when they were babies, and the first 5 years was just normal, wasn't it? It was just the norm. Town looks very tired and run down. I think it's going to take a bit of what sort of accounting? Creative accounting. I think the government here, and I think in all of Europe and America, they're going to have to engage in some creative accounting to sort out the mess that's been caused by this virus. But maybe it's warned everybody. Maybe it's put us all in there. It's highlighted the fact that these things are out there, and we ought to be prepared for them. So maybe all this inconvenience and that later on, hopefully the planning people will get their stuff together, and all this unpleasantness might in the end save us a lot of grief later on. But yeah, a lot of these places aren't going to see they're not going to open again. The economy is altered. We're back to the start. It's a lovely day, cheer up, you'll be fine.
I know.
You going to work, are
In the
you?
morning.
Oh, yeah, you're young, aren't you?
Yeah.
When I wake up, I'm just delighted I'm still alive. You going to work, are you?
School.
Oh, good lord, yeah. Never mind, hey,
Pardon?
take the last year seriously, okay?
Yeah.
Do the exams. Don't do what I did. Take just the last year. Ignore the rest of it. Just the last, cram for the last 6 months. That's all you got to do. Yeah, there you go. Right, back to the start. So it's sort of, I can't say this is a beautiful part of the town. It's basically a motorway junction, which is because the main bridge over the Avon is back there, and the locks were here, so this was a semi, in the days of the canals and that, it was a working area, the working part of the town. There's lots of bars and eateries here. Where that bus is now is the bridge, the main bridge crossing the river at Avon. That's probably where the ford was back in the day. And that's it, yeah, but it's just the centre of it here is a big traffic's traffic. You have to take into account of it, don't you? So it's where we started off. Back there to the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to go along here. And we're going to go and see some statues up here. Yeah, we're gonna We're going to the Gower Memorial. That's what it's called, Gower. Which is just, well, you'll see in a minute. Statues. Summer coming. Summer is on its way. Yeah, summer on its way. So there it is, the Gower Memorial. Obviously, you can see now why I came early. Obviously to the chap himself again, because this is, the only thing they haven't done is change the name to Shakespeareville. Like I say, if it was in Texas, it probably would. I shouldn't be taking a mickey. But if it was in Texas, it would probably now be called Shakespeareville. But this is quite a good, for some money. It took the bloke about 10 years to do this. And he spent most of his own, not most of his money on it, but he put his own money on it, into it. Now this was given to the town in 1888. And it's the work of Ronald Gower, Gower, Ronald, who apparently spent 10 years sculpting it, paying for most of it out of his own personal fortune. He did have a few quid. He was an arty type. Yeah, we'll go into that in a bit later. But what you got up there is obviously the bard himself. I used the word bard, I said I wouldn't use that. But it's a beautiful piece of work. It's got Shakespeare himself and 4 characters from his plays around him. Obviously, there you can read from the bottom Hamlet, not just Hamlet, Yorick. Yeah, he's got a small part, but he's there. They've even got a thing of my ex-missus up here. You'll see her in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. Again, when they were redeveloping the town, they moved it from the original site to this place, but it is still quite nice. You see it as you come into the town. A bit noisy. It's Prince Hal. I say it's I'm not very good at using this camera, am I? There's the man himself. And then here is basically a sculpture of me. I'll just take a thing of this. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not doing really well with this camera thing, am I? There you go. It's just a history of the the statues. You see, 1769 there was when they really started to come to Stratford to memorialise William Shakespeare. That's been his hometown and all that. Before that, I don't think it was necessarily so. You'd have to be very, very careful. There's a picture of me. Sorry, a sculpture of me. It looked about the same size. This is Falstaff. Yeah, beer in hand, although I'm not drinking at the moment. Yeah, scruffy. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, again, it's a nice monument. And that's the history of it. Ronald Gower, Lord Ronald Gower. So he sculpted them himself and then had them in bronze, because it's a big, people often think that you actually send them to a company to do the metal work. And here's the ex-missus washing my blood from her hands. Lady Macbeth. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lovely Lord Gower there was a bit of a character. Let's just say he spent a lot of time with he was an arty character, and despite his protestations to the contrary, yeah, he was gay. He's a gay chap. At a time when it was a bit... It was at a time when it was generally frowned on. He was linked to... Google him. Is the best thing, because he was linked to... He was linked to a couple of scandals up in London. Usual thing. Quite sensibly denied everything. But yeah. He was buried with his friend somewhere down southern England. But he, yeah, a bit of a character. Worth Googling if you're interested in the history. But it's a lovely monument. And as I say, he spent 10 years getting it done, sculpting it, and he paid for a lot of it with his own money. So obviously a fan. And here we are. Back at the Fire Memorial. And back to the bridge here. That's what we do. Come on in. So that's that then. So that's that then. A quick walk round Stratford on Avon. And it's already starting to get busy. People are already starting to come out. Having problems with my gimbally thing for the camera, and that's it. How long did that take? Not very long. Right, that's me for now. I'm gonna go and get myself a coffee. Decide what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. I'm glad I got up and did this. That wheel thing was just been put up the other day, so it's just a temporary thing. Yeah, Warwickshire's worth a look around, not just Birmingham. Yeah, it's worth a visit. I come from yeah, there's a reason I'm not a major fan of Birmingham, although it has got great nightlife and it is a great city. But Warwickshire, you get a nice hotel and a hire car, or nowadays with Uber and things like that. There's lots of country pubs, lots of towns. Warwick itself, which is down there, it's about 10 miles away from here, 10-15 miles, because England is for the whole of Britain, well, England in particular, it's quite cramped. Not a big country. France is 5 times the size of England, although obviously God gave the English all the fish. Being an island, the French got some. Not all of France is good farmland, whereas a lot of England is. Most of England is good quality farmland. There are parts of southern, as you go down towards southern France, where the land isn't as productive. Although Normandy and round there is some of the best farmland you'll find anywhere in the world. Beautiful. You drive for miles and miles. It's a beautiful part of the world, northern France. But England is quite, compared to France, England is quite crowded. So you've got Stratford here, you've got Warwick, you've got Leamington Spa, which is really a Georgian spa town. That's very nice, good shopping there. Lots of, yeah. And of course, Oxford is 30 miles down the road as well. So yeah, Warwickshire. Anyway, that's me for now. I hope I haven't been wasting my time with all this. Out.